all around the garden.
No, maybe for my business account, but I don't even have it. I don't have a physical one. I did, but I don't have the other one anymore.
Yeah.
It's at the bank. I haven't picked it up. I'm about a year overdue. Yeah, okay, hold on. Oh my gosh, what can I talk to you later?
Okay, we're starting. So let's get our bearings. First of all, I want to give you, if you got from last week, if you have what I gave out last week, then I want to give you one extra page. If you don't have it, then I'm giving you the set itself. So I think I'm giving 3 to 3 of you. Okay. Hi, shalom aleichem. Thank you. So, here we are. See you. We have this famous chapter 10 of Inner Space. It's a major shift in the book. It's very important to understand that. Actually, I sent out an email, I think, to every one of you, except you, because I didn't have your email, right? It was on there? I did. So please forgive me. So did you send it to her?
Yeah, she said it.
Okay, good. All right. So it's just an attempt to give an overall. You got it also? Last week I sent out a summary.
Just telling us to read. I just got one that was telling us to read this chapter. Did they say that? Didn't I listen to the share that you sent me? The whole thing. So.
But okay, well, I sent out something of a summary, where we're holding, where we've been, where we're holding right now, what chapter 10 is, what 11 is, etc. All right, it doesn't matter, because I just want to go into. We'll start talking about it. I guess the overview is like this: that Hashem made the universe in a certain way for a certain reason. When we don't know that reason, we're very upset. It's very upsetting the world. If somehow we're able to start intuiting the reasons, or are coming close to approximating the reason why Hashem did this, and the more we understand that, the more we become awed by the fact that he made the universe the way he did. And we say, well, why didn't you tell us? Because if we would have known, then we wouldn't have been against you. We wouldn't have fought you. We wouldn't have felt that you're a bad God. We wouldn't have felt that you've done things that are unfair, that are evil. And now look, it turns out that you're so good and you did all this for us. So there's a switch, that is a shift that has to go on here, that a little knowledge can make a big difference about the way we look at the world. Of course, it's going to start, for some of us more, it's going to start with our personal lives, the way we grew up, the way our parents treated us, the way our teachers treated us, the way our friends treated us. If we have some negative experiences there, they're going to color the way we see God. The rabbis were very sensitive to this issue in the way they set up the prayers, the davening. An emotional fix, an emotional fix has to precede anything intellectual. Because if you're blocked intellectually, and I tell you the most important truth in the whole world, it's very hard for you to hear, because you have a way already of, it's already colored. So to loosen up the emotions and to be able to feel that it's okay to feel bad, but they don't have to philosophize based on those feelings. Feelings are one thing, and how I perceive the world and how I interact with the world is another. I have a healthy system of, I'm able to feel things and I'm able to process them. But if I'm not able to process them, if I'm stuck in certain emotions, then nothing goes in of what we call truth. So it's very important to each person has to, like, where am I holding in all this? What have I been so to speak, what really bothers me. And this system of Kabbalah, which means received wisdom, this system of Kabbalah is there to help us generally and also specifically, first generally, for how to loosen up the knots in our emotions and allow ourselves to hear a higher truth. It's interesting. I've never said it exactly like this. I mean, I'm saying an idea that I believe in, but I'm trying to make a connection with why this is so important to learn, and why it's so important to know that it's not just intellectual knowledge, that it's knowledge that our souls need, because that's what's really at stake here. Is why am I here in this world? And if we can get just some insight into that, then this knowledge becomes a healing and a soothing of our souls. We know that it's all for a reason. We understand that we're here to do something, to be part of something great, etc., etc. So the dealing with the death of the kings, or otherwise known as the shattering of the vessels, or otherwise known as a world that is filled with evil, and it's a problematic world, and a world where everything goes wrong. I just read a piece from Rabbi Yosef Soloveitchik Zatzal. He says, in his inimical way, he says it's an existential tsar. It's not just that something that there are times that are more difficult, whatever. Life itself is an existential constriction and an existential pain. And he says that's he explains a certain machloket between Rambam and Ramban based on that. That Ramban says that it's a mitzvah to daven when there's an etzara, when there's a time of deep trouble, when we're being attacked by an enemy or whatever, and to know that Hashem listens and to believe in Him. And Rambam says that he says in Hilchot Ta'anit that when there's a tsar for the tzibur, it's chiyuni, it's crucial for every single individual who is part of the congregation to join with the congregation in the prayers, and not to take that when something goes wrong, not to take it, oh well, it's just happening, or we can't do anything about it, or oh, that's the way it's supposed to be. All of those are philosophically wrong. One has to pray and know that there's a God who's above nature, who can change things, but He needs us to go through a transformation. And the prayer experience is that. And anyway, not really giving it over so well, but Rabbi Soloveitchik comes out by saying that according to the Rambam, life itself is pain. And I can't do it without the text in front of me, and I'm not going to try anymore. But the shattering of the vessels is an amazing answer to all of this. And one more little thing beforehand that I say, that like 44 or 45 years ago in Los Angeles, I met a rabbi named Rav Ephraim Asher Rotenberg Halevi. Rav Ephraim Asher Rotenberg Halevi was a Hasidic Rebbe in Los Angeles, whose family had all perished in the Shoah. He remarried, and he had a wife and children. She had also been through the Shoah, and she was a Twersky, and she married, and her name was Chana, and she also passed away now, both of them. And for me, they were an incredible island. When I was first beginning, and he opened up a lot of things that he knew, because he was a descendant of Rav Sri Hirsch of Zidichov, one of the great Hasidic masters. And he would give over things to us. So one of the things he gave over was as a Rashi at the beginning of the Torah, where it says that the Torah should have started with Achodesh Hazeh Lechem, Yerosh Chodeshim. This month shall be the head of the months for you, which is all the way back in Exodus, at the beginning of the redemption period. Well, why does the Torah start with the way it does, Rashi asks? It's in order to to tell who the world belongs to, and that when Hashem makes the world, and He makes Eretz Yisrael, and He can give it to He can give it to us, or He can take it away from us. He's the one who decides these things. The way that Rashi says it, though, is that the Torah should have started me'achodesh hazeh lachem. So the Kamarna Rebbe, who is a nephew of the Zirichover, said a very simple but very deep thing. Me ha-chodesh hazeh is written in Hebrew. Like this. Just mem hey chet dalet shin. That's what a Hebrew writer would write. He wouldn't write a vav in the chodesh, right? So it just happens to be that this expression, when you break into two words, is ma chadash. Well, that's also an Israeli thing we say all the time. But in the Kitvei Ari, in the writings of the Ari, which came after Rashi, but in Torah learning, time doesn't exist. The Kamarna says that what Rashi is really asking is, why didn't the creation start with Ma Chadash, with the name of Hashem spelled a certain way, which is called Ma. It's spelled Yud Ke Vav Ke. When you spell with olives, it comes out to Gematria Mem He 45. Why did He rather start the creation with the Shvirat HaKelim, the shattering of the vessels, which happened with what's called the kings of Edom, and that what's the name of Hashem that's there in the Kitvei Ari that we don't mention here in these pages, but is called Shem Ben. There's 4 ways of expanding God's name. From the top down, it's called Ab,
Ben.
Sag, Ma, Ben. Ab is 72, Ein Beit. You spell it out with all Yuds. Sag is all Yuds except one of them is spelled with an Aleph, is 63. 45 is all Alephs. And then Ben, which is 52, is Yud Ke Vav Ke. So you spell Yud, always is spelled Yud Vav Dalet, because Yud is 10 and Vav Dalet is 10, so it always gives you 20. But here you say Hey Hey, Vav Vav, Hey Hey. And it's exactly twice times 26, 52. And that's where Hashem used that name to create a breakage. Why didn't you start with a world that was all together? So the simple answer is, I created a world that's broken, a broken world, a world that hurts, so that the souls would be born into this world and have to build it up again from the bottom. And that's my gift. That's how I want to give eternity to all the souls that existed in the higher planes before all this came about. He made the world for us. He had all these actors, so he had to make a stage and a play. And we come down on the play, into the play on the stage of life, and we play these roles. And we're not aware of the fact that we're playing these cosmic roles. We're playing out God's drama. We're part of the fixing of the universe. Even only we're children and we don't do anything, but the little that we do is worth so much, is so precious to Hashem. But again, the pain is, well, why didn't you tell us this? Why isn't it part of our education? Why hasn't anybody told us why life is the way it is? Why it's a school of hard knocks? So again, I hope it wasn't too difficult to get the point. The point that I'm trying to give over is that this is the breakage. The breakage is a meaningful thing that and it's presented in different places in the Torah and in our writings, and that's what we're about to learn more about, is the different ways that it was presented and what they all teach us, which each one of them teaches us. So what's not, I think, is not in chapter 10 in a clear way is this midrash that I bring at the top of these pages. The death of the kings. Let us see some of the ancient sources for this idea. In the midrash, this series of shatterings is described thus. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa v'hinei tov mod. And Hashem saw, behold, all that he had completed, and behold, it was very good. Rabbi Abahu said, from here we learn that prior to our present creation, the Holy One was creating universes and destroying them, creating universes and destroying them. Borei olamot umachrivan. Borei olamot umachrivan. And it's specifically repeated twice to show that it was that it repeated itself at different levels until the required degree of brokenness was attained. We'll understand why, I hope. When he finally created these, that is to say, the world that we're in now, he said, these are pleasing to me. Those are not pleasing to me. So it's a very enigmatic thing. It's very suggestive of something. Wow, prior to our present creation, Hashem was creating universes and destroying them. How interesting. There are different ways to understand this. We're basically going to understand it through the eyes of the Ari. And he's the address. And we're going to understand, let's jump to the chase, that on page 4 of these pages that I've given you, so if you don't mind, we'll read this first. In order to create an environment in which man could have free will, God withdrew his light, thereby creating a halal. It's the last page of the set, right? Is that clear? A hollow, a void, a vacated space. This original Tzimtzum is the primary concealment of the godly light that preceded and prepared the way for the shattering of the vessels. According to the Ari, this is metaphorically described as God withdrawing and constricting his infinite light to create a space for the world to exist. He then shines his light back into the newly created space, vacated space, but not in the same manner as before its removal. Rather, he introduces it back into the vacated space in a highly measured form to prevent the space from becoming filled too quickly with too much light. We'll just go, yeah. And then even in this highly measured form, at a certain point in the process, just as the light strikes each vessel, we'll find out what vessels are and all that, one after the other, a series of shatterings takes place. Specifically, as the light impacts, 3 things happen simultaneously. The vessel shatters and falls into what we would call at this moment an abyss, a dark abyss. Where does an abyss come from? What are we talking about? So we need a context for all this, but we'll get that. Number 2, what happens is the major part of the light that came down, that hit the vessel, it recoils and it returns to its source above. Hello, that's interesting. It did its job and it goes back up and everything is nice for it. In the meantime, the vessel has shattered and gone down. And 3, sparks or microchips of the light accompany the broken shards of the vessels down into a seemingly endless abyss. So I have 3 important sources for this at the bottom of the page, but let's finish the text first. And then the remaining light is still so great, so powerful, that the initial shattering is followed by at least 6 more, 7 shatterings. All these are caused by purposely bringing too much light into too limited a vessel. It was done purposely. That is our way of seeing it. This is not Gnosticism, where God made a mistake. And what's the cradle of Christianity is that there's 2 gods and that the world is ruled by the lower God and we got to get in touch with the higher God. All that dualistic stuff doesn't enter here, but I'm just saying it just so you should know. This is a unified world where Hashem does everything and he knows what he's doing, and he brought about a world that he wanted to bring about, that even though it's not perfected, but the reason that he didn't perfect it is because he wants us, his children, to be part of the perfecting process. Not that he's depending on us to do it, because he knows that it's like impossible. But he is going to do it, but he's going to do it through us, which is a beautiful marriage of man and God. But man has to align himself with God in order to do this. He has to become apprised of the situation. He has to be told, why was I born the way I was born? Why did I have so much troubles growing up? Why did that kid spit at me? Why did Why did I didn't like my mother? Like, what are you talking? Like, we need a little bit of therapy here. Okay, and I'm finishing. All these are caused, these breakages, these shatterings are caused by purposely bringing too much light into too limited a vessel in order to create an environment, like we said above, in which God's infinite light would be fractured and bifurcated to the point of near total invisibility. This is why God created worlds and destroyed them. Look at this. The intention is not that he made a mistake and scrapped his first world. Well, that's what I thought it would have meant. You created it and destroyed it, so it means you didn't like it. That's the simple import of the Midrash. These I like. This last one I like. Those I didn't like. What do you mean I didn't like them? It's really misleading. But look at how the Kabbalah looks at it. On the contrary, that world, the first shattering, and the second shattering, and the third, that world and all the worlds that followed were extremely exalted and sublime, too exalted and too sublime. God was still too revealed. He needed another breakage and another breakage. And in between each breakage, there's a lot of stuff happening. But the breakages is not because I'm scrapping the first one. It's because I need to work with the first one to make it more broken, more broken, more broken, until my light becomes sieved out enough to create a world where there can be free will and free human beings.
Rav Sutton?
Yeah.
Why would you have to go through that process? I mean, maybe it's the next question can answer, but like God could have created it with the right amount of filtering to start with. So what was that process of filtering that went into it to get it to that point?
Very good question. Psst. I guess I better fold up the books. The Yari answers it. And the Leshem is a nice thing, but all I can say is like this. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. What's the Mishnah say? It says, woe to the Rishaim, woe to the wicked, who, we should look it up, who destroy a world that God made with 10 statements. And happy are the tzaddikim. And I will add like this. Woe to the Rishaim who destroy or who ruin a world that God went to the trouble of doing it with 10. He could have done it in one. Why did he go to the trouble of making it in stages? So that we could see order, a pattern. If it's all fiat, if it's all just he does what he does and he does when he does it and he doesn't, and there's no cause and effect, if there's nothing that we can grab onto, then the world is meaningless. What did you do it for? If you want me to be involved in your world, you work in process so that I can grab onto the bottom of the process and work my way back up through the stages.
So we have access to those the things that we brokenly created. They're part of the way the world's been constructed was through this breaking and.
Excellent, yes. So the Ramchal says a very deep, beautiful beautiful thing that I made part of my book, The Well of Living Waters, which is that the downward process of bringing the world into existence is going to be reversed once we get to the what Hashem wants is the Messianic age, and then we start going up to what the world was before the breakage. It's called Akudim, and we're going to live in Akudim, and then going to go above that. And as we came down, we were unconscious. We were all part of this. There's different ways to say it, but we were the molecules in the Big Bang, so to speak.
Right. This is all like metaphysics. It's kind of what's being described now.
Right. The way the Midrash says it is that Hashem said to every part of creation, I want you to give a part to make man. Man is the only composite being. Means that everything in creation that ever happened is part of us. So the Midrashic way of saying that we contain the entire history of the universe within us, within our body, within our genes, and within our soul, that's the Midrashic. The more a little bit like the conceptual way is that we were there along the way. We just were not conscious. Hashem is bringing this whole thing about in order to give us the ability to come out of his infiniteness, to become separate from his infiniteness, in order to be existing, so to speak, separate from his infiniteness, so we can now do the journey back to his infiniteness, but become infinite within his infiniteness and not become nothing, not become, not lose existence. The gift that the Ein Sof wanted to give us is eternal individual existence within total infinite existence, which is impossible, but only God can do that. Because if his infiniteness is so great, there's nothing that can exist and that can have separate existence within his existence. But he made a world in such a way that by us being koneh, us being acquiring our life within the hiddenness of the world that exists now, we will be able to go up into the higher lights and still exist. That's my favorite Torah because it's like really important. Made a big difference for me.
How does that relate practically though on an everyday level?
What?
That's all very high, but so how does that daily life?
It gives me an amazing context within which my life takes place.
But when we're doing actions, I'm saying, how does that relate to our actions? That understanding how we take the actions.
Anybody else want to answer? This is great discussion. What's the question? What in terms of my actions?
That's really high. That's an unbelievably high concept. So how does that relate to my daily decision-making process to know that that's because I'm going to be dealing with all the tests and things that God is throwing at me, or it's all just an ascension of that ladder? So we just be taking our daily life and what's happening in our very physical world. And
so there were tzaddikim who took this very seriously, and the Baal Shem Tov is one of them, and Rabbi Yisrael Salanter is one of them, and then Rabbi Nachman is one of them, they took this. So they made this the basis of how the human being is going to refine himself to do avodah pinimi, the inner refinement of the human personality, because I am broken, and I'm hurt, and I'm wounded. And why is that? Is he gave me the job to be metakin atzmi, to fix myself, becoming conscious and aware of the godliness within myself is going to now become a miniature tikkun of the entire universe. And my midot, and the way I interact with you, and the way I interact with the bus driver, and with the bank clerk, and with my mother, and my father. Am I mad all the time? Am I hurt all the time? Am I taking it on everybody else? Or am I taking responsibility for my life? And then, but what does it mean to take responsibility? I'm responsible for everything that's happened? No, we're not saying that. It's a godly plan, and it might seem to you unfair, but let's work with it. And Abraham Avinu had a very tough life, and David HaMelech had a tough life. And what they became as a result of the difficulties that they had was something that they could not have become if they had not had. And Yosef and David and every single one of them suffered. And this is an important Torah for me also. Nobody teaches the contact point with us and them, with Moshe and all of them, is they suffered. That's how they became great. That's the secret of becoming great, is to deal with what you've been given and to make something from it. But again, we need help. But if I know that's the reason, what an incredible revelation that is.
Can you say?
Yeah, please.
It's wonderful. I mean, I think it's a matter of like perspective. I personally think it's a real tragedy that this kind of learning is still thought of as having to be learned in the middle of the night, when the morning's out, when the wall was howling, and Ouija boards. And it's really tragic because I feel like I'm around for quite a few years, and this,
You've been around.
nothing speaks to me. And when I say to me, it means to me, no matter where I am from, where I am at. I like this. It's not just mysticism. It's a way of life, and but to actually sit now and to explain how this exactly matches, how you make breakfast. I don't know, but it definitely gives me perspective, and that for me is already a big thing. And also because the fact that if this is useless knowledge, then I don't need to know this. But if I need to know this, according to Ramchal and Baruch Hashem, because we're Abraham here, it means that it has to be with me. It has to do with me. It has to do with me. Otherwise, why should I know what?
Yeah.
God, what were you doing before? Ages before I even came into being. What does that have to do with me? That's the right.
Yeah, the RE system is a very holistic system, and he has a lot to tell us about our souls and
The area has a whole system of the time of the year. With it regard the is that the area that goes through the life the team with Rosh Hashanah the Pesach, is that the area? Talks about how it's supposed to relate to time. No?
for sure he has a lot. It's huge, and I'm not as knowledgeable as I wish I was, but whatever, I've received whatever I received, and if we go on together, we know each other in another. We go through the years, and we can bring in other people who know more, and it's an open field here. All I ask is that you understand this one thing I said before, is that this is stuff that our soul wants to know and needs to know, and it's a healing for the soul that there is such a teaching. That's my sense of it. I didn't learn that from anybody else. That's an actual feeling. I'm just trying to express that feeling, but I got that. Oh my goodness, this is important. And I don't have a big brain in order to really figure out the whole system. I learn, and I do the best I can with the sources, but even though maybe I give the impression that I know a lot, but I'm not a head knower as much as I'm a heart knower, and then whatever. So, but when I find a source that speaks to me and that really makes sense, I say, oh I have to, I was born to translate this. I was born to try and make this understandable. So we're going to finish this now, and if you don't mind, we're going to read the bottom of the page also in the small print. The top here in the bold is still going on. They still revealed too much light. The higher worlds, as the breakages began, many contractions were therefore necessary to filter and measure the light even more. There's more we can do on this, but this was just at least an attempt to put it in a few sentences. Only after such a step down of devolution, that's a word I made up. Devolution, coming down from higher and higher to more, very, very, you can't even touch it up there, but you come down and down and down and down to a world where you can actually touch. I call devolution. Only after such a step down devolution could the process that began with the original Tzimtzum be brought to its intended conclusion, a physical world in which God's light would be almost completely undetectable. It is this step-down devolution that the Midrash describes as the Holy One creating and destroying universes. So let's see if we can just say, what is this going on? Let's see the Ari. Know that when these vessels shattered, the lights themselves, i.e., whose impact caused them to shatter, immediately recoiled and departed and ascended in order to return to their place above. Only tiny sparks of the light remained in the broken shards of the vessels and descended with them into the abyss. It's a pretty power-packed. I mean, that's how the Ari talks. He's on every. It's not just a bunch of words. And also there's 50 gates in what's called the Etz Chaim, the magnum opus that came out from Chaim Vital, and it was basically put together by his son Shmuel Vital. And one of the 50 gates, Hamishim Sha'arim, right? Basically the symbolic idea of what's called Hamishim Sha'arei Bina, the 50 gates of understanding. Is one of the gates is called 3 words, Orot, Nitzotzot, Kelim. And it forms an acrostic. Aleph Nun Taf. It's not totally clear, but it's Orot Nitzotzot Kelim. The lights came and impacted the vessels and then went back. the nitotzot are the sparks of the light that descended into the abyss with the vessels. And it's called Shar Anach, just because that's everything is always used in abbreviations. But the point is that this is in one statement here that the Ari has given us that that most of the light recoils and goes back up. And why that's important? I applied it in a diagram that I had made once. The diagram of the 6 days of creation. You see the top is the first day. That's the day that Hashem separated the light from the darkness. The second day is Hashem separating the lower waters from the upper waters. The third day is vegetation, trees, and fruits. The Midrash says that that Hashem did Oseh. He was Etz Pri, Oseh Pri. Etz Pri, a fruit tree. Oseh Pri, that produced fruits, is what he said he wanted. What he got was Etz Oseh Pri, a tree that produced fruit. It was no longer edible. That little missing word there. So there's a whole thing with that the earth sinned, and it was a preparation for Adam's sin. It was already implanted into creation. The midrashic level here is a whole class that I give on just that something went wrong every day. Here the moon complained and said, I want to have my own crown. Hashem said, oh yeah, well let's go make yourself small, which seems to be like a punishment. You're complaining that you don't have your own crown. Go make yourself small. But on a deeper level, you're going to have your own crown. By becoming small and going down and creating your own crown through your own efforts, you're going to have your own crown. It's not a punishment at all. But again, these things are presented as children's stories, and they can be interpreted in a number of ways. The fifth day is the two Leviathans. In the Torah, they're called the Taninim HaGedolim. Taninim HaGedolim. And there's one yud missing in the word Taninim. Okay. We're gonna welcome Lisa, but we'll talk later. But just to welcome you, that it's your father's yortzeit, Ezra ben Abraham. Good deal. And Bezat Hashem, she's going to tell us a little bit about her Abba, very beloved. And I was going to do it if she didn't come. And great. So the fifth day is the Taninim HaGedolim. And in the Torah, the word Taninim is written Taf Nun Nun Mem. Or maybe Taf Nun Yud Nun Mem. But certainly the between the last two letters, there should be a Yud, and it's really just goes Nun Mem. So if a child would be brought up to the Sefer Torah and said, well, how would you pronounce this word? He'd say Taninam. That one missing Yud, Rashi says, and based on the Gemara in Baba Batra 74 and 75, that one missing Yud is a sign to us in the written Torah of a whole story, that there was a male and a female. There were Taninim, there were two, but Hashem had to kill the female and salt her for the future. Pickled herring. The source for pickled herring. So this is it's all very exciting stuff. So there were two, but there's now only one, Taninam. It's all hinted at in one word, one letter. And then here, of course, in the Garden of Eden, the story gets a little bit expanded. Something went wrong every day. We're promised. Then, of course, the two trees and the two human beings, two fish, the sun and the moon, right? The moon had to be made small. Even the sun was put in a sheath. It was limited. And here the male was castrated by the fish. The male was also limited here vis-a-vis the female. She was frozen and pickled and salted, and he was castrated. And Rashi doesn't bring that part because it's a little bit not good, but it's in the Gemara. So he just brings, it's not fair that Rashi did that, but whatever, for whatever reason, it's there in the Gemara that the male was castrated. And so the equivalent of the fish here of castrating the male and pickling the female is the putting the sun in its sheath, which is limiting the ability of the sun to give light to the moon, and the moon becoming made small. So you see a pattern here. So in terms of what we just learned before, basically what Hashem is doing is Vayar Elohim et haor ki tov. Hashem saw the light that it was good, Vayavdel, and he made Havdalah. And there's different ways of interpreting Havdalah, but one is that he took out the major part of the light. The Sefer Bahir says he took out 6/7 of the light, and he made the world with 1/7 of the light. Now here, he separates the lower waters from the upper waters. He now separates more of the light and keeps that above, recoiling of the light, and only a little bit of that light now goes down as the lower waters. And then from that lower waters, another metaphor is the fruit and the bark, the fruit and the tree. The tree was supposed to be edible, but it's not any longer because it's covered by bark. And so it means that the bark and the tree, the bark is a lower level. We're not getting the fruit as it was supposed to be. It's certainly on the level it was supposed to be. And then here, of course, it's very clear. This is not as clear as the others before it and after it, but when you see how they all work together, so the sun and the moon is, of course, the sun is being taken out of the picture of now the moon going down. She cannot receive from the sun like she would have liked to, and the sun and the female and male fish. So then we get here. We did the history. It goes down as a result of the Chet of Adam Rishon, which was already preceded by everything that went wrong here. It's not a surprise that something went wrong here, that there was a breakage here as well, and that the midrashic level of the 6 days of creation is an exact parallel to the breakage of the shattering of the vessels. So then we go into history. We only come up with Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and then we go down into Egypt. We come up into Eretz Yisrael, and to the first temple, we go down into Babylon. We come up at the second temple, and we go down into history. So this chart leaves us here, now poised to return to the level of Garden of Eden, to return what we had then, now to get back the level of the male Leviathan and the female both together, that the moon, Yeshayahu Navi says, V'haya or halavana, ki or hama, ve'or hama shivatayim, ki or shivati yamin. It's an actual verse, that the light of the moon will be like the light of the sun, and the light of the sun will be 7 times that of the light of creation. So this is like a unified system that got broken down like everything else, and you got to pick up all these pieces from all these different places and start to understand, oh my goodness, Hashem put me in this world as a part of this incredible process of putting together the broken pieces of his light. And I'm one of them, right? Hello. And so then we're going to get back to the trees are going to taste like the fruit again. And one possible meaning of that is that the nations of the world are going to become Israel together with us. The fruit and the bark. They're the bark right now, we're the fruit. But the whole point of it is that to lift up everything. And here the lower waters becoming joined with the upper waters is that the upper waters are like the angels and the lower waters are like the souls of human beings who had to go down. So we are going to be higher than the angels as a result of having gone down into this brokenness. And whatever, but just really thank you for allowing me to share this. This is one of those famous pictures that speak 1,000 words for me. This is a picture that speaks 1,000 words. I love this picture. Yes.
Well, is it only like cumulatively all of humanity that actually travels this together? Or are there actually individuals who actually could achieve such a level that they actually start climbing that ladder before the rest of humanity?
Oh, great question. Is it only just the collective humanity, or is it possible with individuals? So it's a very interesting answer. it's a collective humanity is basically energized by specific individuals. And therefore, humanity is seen as a whole body, from the feet up to the head, and the head down to the feet. Every one of us has a position. We're all part of this body, but which this diagram. There are three diagrams. They all work together. This is what the book "Well of Living Waters" is all about. This is the body of history. It's borrowed from a shiatsu book, but the Midrash says that the first souls came from the head of a body, and then here, the desert, we came out, and then we built the first temple at the solar plex, to Babylon, into exile, which is the intestines. We came back and built the second temple, which is the circumcision. Then we go into 2,000 years of history, and we're in the feet of history. And the play on words is that we are the souls of the feet of history.
That's why it's called the heels of Mashiach.
The heels of Mashiach. Ikvot Mashiach. So,
in Daniel, Daniel talks about the claws of, I don't know if there's any kind of relation to that.
the Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar has a vision of a statue.
And the feet.
The feet are clay, and Ishmael and Esav.
This chart, last week we were speaking about the three stages, so this corresponds to this chart, exactly, this idea of coming down, and coming back up again to where we were, but doing.
Yeah, the three charts all come full circle. They all don't meet it. We're holding in time, in space, and in consciousness. We're all holding we're poised at a very special moment, just before a breakthrough into a whole nother level. That's why there's a force and a contra force now that's basically trying to stop us from getting the light.
Is that why the Jewish people is getting harder and harder to just even wake Jews up, because they're just getting deeper and deeper into this?
All of this could be used, if it's done right, made a movie of it, whatever, I don't know, but something to communicate this to especially to teenagers. This is the most exciting movie around. As they say, reality is much more exciting than science fiction. Yes.
Because the higher souls came from the head, and because we're all one body, does it make sense that Mashiach comes from the Neshama? The connection with Mashiach is from the head, and the head can pull up the feet, right?
There's amazing things about this. The fact that we're from the feet doesn't mean that. We've been here before. We've been every time. Every time we come, there's more of us. There's a bifurcation. We go back up to Shemaim. They say, you got to be born again. We say, oh, no, I don't want to go back there. It's too hard. Well, you got to go back there, and we're going to split your soul into 5 different families, because parts of you need this and parts of you need that. And then there's another life and another life. And there's also good reasons to break up a soul, but this is the so-called negative. Until there's 6 billion of us, and maybe even 7 billion of us right now on the planet, and it includes every single human being alive. And it's very special things that we're just rushing through right now. But it's like it's such a meaningful thing to be able to try to communicate these things, especially to people like yourselves. You have the ears, you have the heart, you have a thinking brain. You're understanding there's something going on here, and I'm just trying to be like the guy who's giving it over to you in a way that you can start to really get it, and then together we can get it even better, because I'm just beginning. Just a few. So the Ramchal says that the return trip will be joyous, because we'll be conscious going back through all the stages that we came down. And so it really is a going back full circle to where we came from. But the net difference is, I like to say that it's embodied in what's called the 13 hermeneutical rules of Torah learning of Rabbi Yishmael. And one of them is klal uprat uklal atadan ela ke'en haprat. It's a technical thing of how to learn Torah, that if the Torah says don't steal anything, especially sweaters, donkeys, and oxen, And that means everything. That's a klal, a prat, a klal, right? So you've now defined what the klal is by the definition of what the qualities that are included in the detail. You've lifted the details up to klal, whatever. I've written about it, whatever. The point is that we came from the great klal. We came from oneness. Hashem pulled his light back in stages in order to create the possibility of other. Stage 2, like we said last week. Stage 3 is the returning into the klal. But eyatadan ela ke'ena prat. But then when you go back now into the great klal, now you'll be now considered as an individual within the prat, which was impossible before this whole process. So this is the king. This is all the parables of the king in the Zohar and the Baal Shem Tov and Rabbi Nachman and Chabad that all sent their son away. The king who sent his son away so that eventually the son could become king. Do you see how they looked at these things, how they tried to make them available to us?
I always thought that these tales of Rabbi Nachman could be made into amazing stories now if you could start.
Yeah, it's the time. Animation.
Yeah.
Music. And we have the voices. We don't need Leonard Nimoy anymore. Yeah, our voices. It's okay. It's cool. Oh boy. Okay, so without further ado, Lisa, please allow Lisa to do this, okay? Is that all right with you? We got between 5 and 10 minutes. So sit here, though.
I'm really deeply touched that you're having me sit here
It's a great seat.
and that I could be here. Bechlal is really a mess because I was injured recently in an accident and I wasn't sure I was going to make the trip, and then I wasn't even sure I was going to make it tonight. So it's really special to be here and to hear the Torah that you were just sharing seems really relevant to my father's story. So this concept of that. There has to be a breaking, there has to be a separation, there has to be exile in order for things to be completed and redeemed in the end. So my father passed away a year ago tonight. His name was Ezra ben Avram Gadol, and I just came from the Adishul where they also say the mother's name, and his mother's name is Gita. His parents were martyrs in the Shoah, and my father himself was a survivor. Mm-hmm. He was 91 when he passed, and I like to think that he, like Sarah, we say, had many lives. So my father had many lives. He had a life in Europe with his parents in an idyllic Hasidic home in Poland. They were very loving people, and he had 6 siblings growing up. One had passed around the same time that he was born, but 6 were growing up with him. And then he had from they lived in Danzig by the time the Nuremberg laws were enacted. So he was born in 23. So by 33, when the Nuremberg laws took place, he was 10 years old. And then the war started, of course, in 39, 6 years later, and then ended in 45. So that's already like 3 major different kind of lives. And then after the war, he was in a DP camp, and then in a hospital in the Pyrenees, and then in Paris, waiting for 6 years for a visa to come to America to be reunited with a brother. He almost came to Eretz Israel, but his brother in America, who had gone via Panama, another convoluted story, typical Jewish experience in the 20th century, his brother convinced him to avoid another war and come to America. And then he had a whole other life there. So he lived all these very many lives. And as you know from all the stories that you've all heard about survivors, that he suffered all those tragedies and all those indecencies and all those crimes really against humanity. There was, stages in which some relatives ran away. 4 of his siblings ran away. 2 came here. The brother I mentioned to Panama, and another brother to Sweden. And my father's parents were with him, and 1 brother and a sister. And of those 5, only my father made it out. And he used to say with great pride that he was liberated by the American Army, by General Patton's Third Army in April of 1945, and he would never forget that day, he said. And I said, Dad, that's my birthday. My birthday's on the same day. It took us time before we even realized that, because I didn't know growing up that was his liberation day, and I didn't even know growing up really everything that had happened. He told me around the time I would have become a bat mitzvah, but he was from Poland, so we didn't even have that. But he told me his story as a rite of passage. There's so much that I could say about my dad, and I've actually shared his story to many different communities in my work. He had a profound influence on me. He had bone marrow failure towards the end of his life, so he was greatly iron deficient, but he had an iron core. He had incredible strength, and I recognized that strength during his lifetime, because he was like all of us are singular, but he was somehow even more singular. He felt like he embodied a window to another world. He was very old world. And he was like Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. He would talk to the Eibishter out loud all the time. And he would sing Hazanas. That's how he hummed, and that's how he sang around the house. And he loved Yiddishkeit so much that I feel that was a huge part of his legacy and part of the gift and education that he gave me. To know what it is to love Yiddishkeit, to love your Yerusha, to love your inheritance, and to celebrate it. And that too really influenced my work. My dad's 11th month, or I should say my 11th month of mourning, concluded at the time of Parsha Achrei Mot. And on that Shabbat, the Rav looked at me and he said, Achrei Mot Kadoshim. After death, we recognize how holy someone is. And I thought to myself, he's not talking to me. He thinks he's talking to me, but he's not talking to me, because I knew how holy my dad was. The minute he left this world, I said, holy, holy, holy. And in emails and in notes, everything, I would always say, my Holy Father. And I had the merit to have Avraham come to the Levaya of my Holy Father last year at this time, which, again, I want to thank you for. And yet I realized soon after the rabbi said that, and I thought, no, it doesn't apply to me. It did apply to me, because of this one example. On my father's tavla, on the tombstone, there are many minhagim represented of how we bury with kavod for a survivor. There's a special line that we say if their parents were martyred. We say that their loss should not be for naught. Their blood shouldn't be covered up. These are all lines from our traditions, all these different psukim. And under the survivor's name himself, we say Ud Mutzal Me'esh HaShoah. You could translate that as like a spark that was saved from the great fire. So I spent a lot of time researching the right way to honor him and his past and his challenges. And he suffered so much for being Jewish, and he expressed a desire to live here. It didn't happen because of illness, but he also expressed a desire to be buried here. And so I felt like I had an imperative to make that happen. And he passed on Friday night and took time, because we lived in California, for everything to be processed, and with the time difference and the flights. But finally, the burial happened here on Wednesday morning. And then during the course of the Shloshim, I learned of the minhag that in Yerushalayim you can put up the mitzvah at the end of the Shloshim. And that was my next imperative.
And so that's when I started researching all these psukim. And I put on the line after his name, Ud Mutzal Me'esh HaShoah, thinking he is a living spark, a neshama that survived this great fire. And it was only on that Shabbat when Rabbi Ferris in Berkeley Chabad said to me, Achrei Mot Kadoshim, then I realized how true what he was saying, because my father's survival was not only physical, it was spiritual. And when he became a zaken around the age of 70, he started speaking in different communities in California, in Southern California, out near the desert. Not a lot of Jewish people there who were so connected to the old world, and not a lot of survivors. And he would go to different schools and tell his story again and again and again. And it opened him up, and it became a kind of healing, a deep redemption from that great brokenness that we were just talking about. And people would ask him, how do you believe in God after everything that you went through, losing your parents and he lost everything. You guys all know these stories. Each one of these survivor stories is a universe. It's a universe of pain and a universe of miracles and a universe ultimately of redemption. And the redemption, my father used to say, of themselves, because the greatest challenge that they had after the war was to learn how to become a mensch again. Because they had been treated like vermin, and they had animalistic instincts that they had to act upon in order to survive. And then after the war, they had to correct that. So on that Shabbat of Achrei Mot Kadoshim, I realized that the line, Ud Mutzal Me'esh HaShoah, was so appropriate, because when people would ask my father, do you still believe in God? And if so, how? My father would say, I believed before the war, and I believed after the war, and I wasn't going to let Yimach Shmo take that away from me too. And I realized that his Ud, this incredible spark, was his emunah. It wasn't only physical, like I said, it was a spiritual survival. That is a great testimony to his iron strength, that it was not only physical, was also spiritual. I've written a lot about my dad. That's my profession. I've traveled with him to Europe. I researched our family tree back 5 generations through Poland. I even tested our DNA. I just wanted to know everything that I could possibly find out about him. But I feel that the incredible merit of being able to bring him to Israel and create this memorial to him on his Tavla, and to say Kaddish for him for these 11 months, and then for the first time again tonight after this break of 1 month, shows me so much more about him. I did all that work to find out more, but I know even more now. And I feel like I'm still discovering more. Even tonight, as I said Kaddish, I felt his strength with me. And I see hashgacha in so many places, just like in your teaching tonight, and how it connects to his story. There's volumes to say, and there's nothing to say.
You said that amazingly well. You're a remarkable speaker.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. He was a remarkable person, and he had a great love of language. I'll just say this. He had a great love of language. He loved people. He loved Hashem's creation so much, and he loved Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. And so bringing him here was a personal geula for him. And I feel very blessed that I got to share in it. Thank you for sharing it with me tonight.
Thank you very
It
much.
should be a Melech for all of us.
Amen. Amen.
Okay, I have to go, but just to tell you that Yochanan, who's usually here, who sits there usually, his daughter Ma'ayana is in the
Oh, no,
hospital.
not the one that was here last week.
Yochanan is always
But
here.
there was a little girl with him.
That's his older girl.
Oh, okay. Oh,
So,
she's in the hospital?
Yochanan is Yeah, okay, I won't read you the letter, but it's,
She okay?
her name is Ma'ayana Bat
Mayana
Devora,
Mayana Batavor?
and she lost her ability to speak. She's having trouble breathing.
What the heck? All of a sudden from out of the blue?
No,
Oh, she's been sick.
it's something that the doctors have said that they've done everything they can and there's nothing they can do anymore. And it's like just she's an amazing neshama.
Wow, so sad.
And I knew that the story of Lisa's father, in the merit of your father, and what you just did and said that this little girl Ma'ayana Bat Devora Lieberman should have a miraculous healing. But whatever the case, her parents, her brothers and sisters, everything is an amazing story. And we just want to I want you to have that name, Ma'ayana Bat Devora. Okay.
It's Ma'ayana.
Ma'ayana. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank
I
you.
really feel it was important for me, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.